From Washington to Moscow and across Europe, all eyes are on Anchorage, Alaska, where Presidents Trump and Putin are preparing for a highly anticipated dialogue. The U.S. has expressed its desire to achieve a ceasefire. Russia has affirmed its goodwill in seeking a lasting solution, and Europe sees this as a moment to test the possibility of building a golden bridge for reconciliation. Regardless of the outcome, this summit holds significant importance, marking a new step in the effort to find peace for Ukraine. However, analysts also warn that without a clear result, the Alaska summit risks being reduced to mere political statements rather than paving the way toward peace. When U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin met in Helsinki in 2018, the pair alarmed allies with a friendly encounter where Trump sided with the Russian leader over his own intelligence agencies on election interference. Trump flies to a meeting in Alaska with Putin on Friday, August 15th, in a different public mood, impatient with the Russians' unwillingness to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine and angry over missile strikes on Ukrainian cities. The answer could have deep implications for European leaders concerned that Russia, if allowed to absorb parts of Ukraine, will be more aggressive toward NATO allies near Russia, like Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. It matters even more for Ukraine, which has been losing ground to Russian forces after 3.5 years of grinding combat.
Based on the flurry of developments over the last few days, it still remains unclear what the actual outcome of the meeting will be. I don't think it's going to lead to any kind of permanent deal. Even President Trump has hinted at that. This might be the beginnings of a framework for future negotiations. Maybe best case scenario, we'll get some kind of temporary ceasefire.
Although there have recently been statements showing a tougher stance toward Moscow, Trump has previously made several moves indicating a desire to improve relations with Russian President Vladimir Putin. When Russia launched its attack on Ukraine in 2022, Trump avoided making direct criticisms aimed at Moscow. On the Russian side, President Putin, who had not received much goodwill from previous U.S. presidents, expressed appreciation for Trump's efforts to promote bilateral relations. Some analysts believe it is necessary to closely monitor Trump's future approach, especially whether he might be influenced by Putin's view that Russia has the right to expand its influence in Ukraine.
Probably Putin has the upper hand. He feels very confident that his isolation from the West is ending. He's been invited to the United States, even though he's an indicted war criminal. He knows that President Trump really wants to say that he's a successful peacemaker, that he's a candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize. And the other thing that President Trump wants, and President Putin wants too, is to improve the economic relationship. The American side has prepared all of these deals, prospective deals, Alaskan oil that the Russians should invest in, rare earth minerals. Putin wants sanctions relief. His economy is struggling. He's got the prospect of all these economic deals. So I think he's coming into this feeling fairly self-confident. And yet how this war ends will have a major impact, obviously, not only on Ukraine, but on its European supporters. They've gone to great pains, the Europeans, with Ukraine to try and persuade President Trump not to agree to sign a deal in which Ukraine would have to give up territory that Russia doesn't even control and make promises never to join the West. And therefore, they have had these intense interactions with President Trump, including yesterday, and they're hopeful that they're all on the same page. But given the way that President Trump vacillates between praising and criticizing Putin and criticizing Zelensky and occasionally praising him, I don't think that they would be right to be too confident that whatever they think they've agreed to with President Trump will in fact happen. President Trump admires Putin. He's admired Putin all along. He admires strong men. He has a fascination with Russia. He's been wanting to do business with Russia since he went to the Soviet Union in 1987. He's wanted to build that Trump Tower. He thinks there are endless business possibilities there. That's actually belied by the experience of U.S. businesses, certainly in the last decade. But he has this fascination. And he believes somehow that Putin is his friend, Putin is a former KGB case officer. He's a former judo champion. He is very good at understanding people's weaknesses, at understanding how to flatter people, to manipulate them, how to appeal to them. So I have no idea what he really thinks about Donald Trump, but I think he certainly sees an opportunity in President Trump to improve U.S. relations and to get Russia the recognition that he believes that it deserves.
Trump told reporters on Wednesday that he might broker a second meeting that includes both Putin and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky if the Alaska session goes well. Russia has given no indication it is prepared to make concessions amid Ukrainian worries that Trump might make a deal without their input. Zelensky says he would like to see a ceasefire first, followed by security guarantees. When Trump assumed office again in January, the Republican president tried to revive the warmth between the two leaders from his first term, expressing sympathy for Putin's isolated position in the world and vowing to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. Despite all the sweeteners, the Russian leader has refused to play along with Trump's efforts to steer the two sides into a peace deal. Putin has talked to Trump regularly, but has kept up deadly bombing raids against Ukraine. For Trump, who is drawn to the spectacle of a high-profile summit with the world watching, the lure of making a deal is strong. He has engaged in an open campaign for a Nobel Peace Prize this year, pointing to what he has claimed as his diplomatic victories, and has unnerved U.S. allies with his eagerness for a Ukraine peace deal that they fret could embolden Putin.
Case study that historians and policy analysts are going to write books for decades going forward because you have two very strong-willed men in control of two of the most powerful countries on earth, certainly the U.S. being the most. And whether this will be sort of the stare-down moment that people think, sort of like a Yalta 1945 with Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin on the battleship Missouri kind of carving up the post-World War II order. I don't think we're going to get to that moment, but still, anytime you get two leaders like this in a room together, there are going to be some fascinating dynamics and that interplay of their personal relationship, but then again, their leadership positions of these two very important countries, and how that all plays out tomorrow will just be really interesting to see.
In recent days, Ukrainian and European leaders have protested Trump's assertion that Russia and Ukraine will have to engage in land swaps in order to reach a peace deal. According to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, Putin floated the prospect of a nuclear arms agreement between Russia and the U.S. when chairing a meeting of senior Russian officials at the Kremlin on the eve of the meeting between the Russian and U.S. presidents in Alaska. Putin said such an agreement would be conducive to safeguarding world peace. He also praised the Trump administration's sincere efforts to end the Ukraine crisis. The meeting between Putin and Trump is scheduled to take place at 11:30 local time on Friday in the Elmendorf-Richardson military base in Anchorage, the largest city in Alaska. The two heads of state will hold one-on-one talks centering on the settlement of the Ukrainian crisis and the most pressing international and regional issues before a meeting of delegations from both countries. Putin and Trump will hold a joint press conference following the talks. On August 14th, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that President Donald Trump will enter a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin with hopes of achieving a ceasefire agreement in Ukraine, although a comprehensive solution to the conflict will require more time.
Well, to achieve a peace, I think we all recognize that there'll have to be some conversation about security guarantees. There'll have to be some conversation about, territorial disputes and claims and what they're fighting over. All these things will be part of a comprehensive thing. But I think the president's hope is to achieve some stoppage of fighting so that those conversations can happen. These are tiny technical things that take some time to work out. So to have a peace agreement, but we'll see what's possible tomorrow. Let's see how the talks go. And we're hopeful. We want there to be a peace. We're going to do everything we can to achieve one. But ultimately, it'll be up to Ukraine and Russia to agree to one. Okay? Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
The point is, the Europeans issued a paper and that presented afterwards to Mr. Trump. And Mr. Trump took his time to listen to them, which is not absolutely necessary for him because he could have sent Mr. Vance. So all in all, the meeting was firstly politically necessary, and secondly, it was the good chance for the Europeans at least to show the world what we do think, what tomorrow should be the outcome in Alaska. We do see that The two leaders want to at least sit at the table, and this is a very big success. Firstly, for Mr. Trump, because 3 years on, no one could take Mr. Putin out of his country in the Western Hemisphere. And he invites him, and he does follow the invitation. This is a big point for Mr. Trump. For Mr. Putin, it does show he is still so important that the leader of the Western world invites him to his own country, and therefore he joins. So what may be the outcome? Mr. Putin will have to deliver at least something for Mr. Trump, which he can sell at home. And that might be a ceasefire towards Ukrainian cities in the hinterland. Nothing more, but nothing less. It would mean for the civilians that they could sleep through the night since 3 years the first time. So this is a first step to a peace. We can't expect much more, but we may be surprised. International law might give us a good handrail on that. The first thing is it is nothing more than a ceasefire, and this might be expected from tomorrow's meeting in Alaska. The next step would be a truce, which does mean we need more negotiations. And this is what Mr. Putin always says. He doesn't say yes to a truce without negotiations. Europeans want a truce and then negotiation. This is the big difference of the two sides currently. And maybe tomorrow's meeting may give us a kind of golden bridge between these two positions. But there must be at least something Mr. Trump can take with him to Washington, and that could be the ceasefire, and the next step might be then in Russia, something like a truce. And then we can start thinking about a peace talk, because peace talks mean that the Ukrainians must consider to give up territory. Otherwise, they won't have any chance for a peace treaty. Which would be easier if they stay with a truce, because as long as it's a truce only, one can say, legally spoken, this remains Ukrainian territory. It might be occupied, but from a legal point of view, it's still Ukrainian, and the Russians may claim it. So international law might give us some golden bridges. We will see what tomorrow happens if the two leaders find a way which they can sell at home and save their face.